So as a continuation to the media racism narrative, I wanted to also record this as a just sort of a challenge to those who basically endorse the movement of Black Lives Matter and the entire narrative around the basically systemic racism, etc. So let's just kind of dive into it. So first, I'm sure most people know what it is, but just for the sake of completeness, let's repeat. Black Lives Matter is just the newest grassroots movement that is sort of a response to this narrative of systemic oppression, systemic racism. It's got a few related narratives and cultural means. The idea of hands up, don't shoot. The whole Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, that kind of thing, and then it kind of goes back to the old chestnut of driving while black being an offense. All of this basically is really a set of narratives that tries to portray this. Racial animus is present in police forces across America. It manifests itself based in the form of disproportionate levels of fatal outcomes in police encounters, which is then used as the sort of the back end proof into systemic racism. Now, to basically put it in simplistic messaging, what this is saying to the average black kid that's learning this for the first time, that America, despite whatever you might have been told in history, America is still heavily racist, and most importantly, cops are racist. Police place no value on a black life, and therefore you should fear a police encounter because you're likely to get shot. And they will cover it up. That's how little you matter. I mean, this basically, in simplicity, this is the message. So let's just kind of explore that. Now, of course, there's the counterclaim from the police that there is no systemic racism, that police don't, they're trained to respond with a specific protocol, and then there's a way for you to interface with the police. They don't respond out of racism. They respond out of escalation and specific training that they have. It's the context of the encounter that drives their response. And suspects are not shot because of their race. They're shot when they present a danger to the police officer. And police often provide many statistics to actually, refute the narrative and to support their position, but they seem to get ignored by the media. So I'm not going to worry about the statistics per se. I just want to walk through this as a thought experiment. So all you need to do is just follow along with me and just see if you agree with my reasoning. And if my reasoning is flawed, feel free to ignore it. So here's the idea. Now, kids are, continuously bombarded by cultural messaging, right? So, I'm showing here, the various actors or artists that a kid might, let's just take the idea of some like young black kid in inner city America, let's say between 14 and 17, right? He's not mature enough to have sort of the experience of life and understand personalities and sort of his ability to navigate certain things. He's kind of fresh in life, and in cultural messaging, he'll pick up what car to like, what clothes to wear, etc., what music to listen to. But separately, there's activist messaging, right? And unfortunately, activist messaging used to be relegated to actual, observance of their demonstrations, but it is so saturated in the media that, regardless of any sort of station, you see it online, you see it on social media, you see it on YouTube, you hear it on Twitter, BBC, every single station carries this in saturation mode, right? And I think everyone has seen some elements of the Black Lives Matter demonstration, all the various messaging, all of that. So now this is another type of messaging that this kid receives, right? So his basis of understanding of how the world sees him, and specifically how police sees him, is now this, plus whatever training he might have received in school or in his family, okay? Now, let's continue. This kid has made some positive choices. He's hit the books. He's probably, he's hoping that he's going to do well in sports. He's planning to attend to college, whatever the case may be. But he's got hopes. But like all of us, he's also made some poor choices, right? Maybe he's tried some drugs. Maybe he has some drugs. Some friend of his showed him a gun, let him borrow it for a while, and he happens to have it in his car. And just by the most unfortunate circumstance of events, he meets this unfortunate moment. This is the thought experiment. He's in this car. There's a gun in his car. And he sees flashing red lights. He's getting pulled over, right? Maybe he's got some drugs. Maybe he's got a gun. Let's say a gun. Now, the cop gets out. He's got one hand on the gun. He's walking up to the car. So now, this is a moment of decision. And it is, unfortunately for him, it might be a life and death decision, right? Because you've got one view of the future where, there's two outcomes here, right? Either he survives. I'm not worried about whether or not he might get arrested for the gun he has or whatever, but I'm going to make it binary. Either he survives, then therefore maybe he can pursue his dreams, or he's one of the statistics and gets killed, right? Well, what's in his head? He's been told that in this circumstance, he is likely to be shot, right? Now, most other race, white kids get taught by their parents that, when a police officer comes up, you're in a charged situation. Keep your hands on the 10 and 2, and don't make any sudden moves. Don't reach for anything without telling him. Don't make him think like you have a gun because he will shoot you, right? So in that moment, you are in a charged situation, so do not behave suspiciously, right? Which is, by the way, the typical training that everyone should be receiving from the media, from their parents, from their peers, etc. However, that got somehow hijacked by this narrative. But hands up, don't shoot. Black Lives Matter. So now, maybe the kid is very mature. Maybe the kid is not as mature. Maybe the kid decides that today, maybe he's feeling lucky. He's likely to have pulled the one cop on the force that's not racist that won't shoot him, right? That might be what he's thinking. But realistically, what reasons does he have to cooperate at that point? Because if he's fundamentally convinced he is likely to die, isn't it much more likely that his fight or flight response, his survival instinct will kick in, and he is likely to either try to, peel out of there like a bat out of hell, or maybe grab the gun and try to shoot the cop first, or whatever the case may be, but some sort of retaliatory or some sort of flight response, right? Both of which are going to make the cop have to react, right? And, let's be honest. A trained cop with his hand on the gun, ready for any eventuality, sees the kid reach for a gun, chances are the kid gets shot, not the cop gets shot, right? If the kid takes off and he's in a pursuit, chances are at the end of a pursuit, he might get shot if he waves the gun, right? Now, what makes the difference between him cooperating and living versus acting stupidly and getting shot? It's whatever programming he's got in his head. So now just take a moment to reflect on that, because if you are a person who has supported this Black Lives Matter narrative, who you've gone out and demonstrated because, hey, you felt you were supporting something. If the narrative is true that there is in fact a racial animus on part of the police, then maybe you did right. But just think if this story is bullshit and it's just media making it up, then you actually have contributed to this event going the wrong way. Now, this is the only time I'll spend on actual or on any statistics at all, but just keep in mind that there's about 6.5 million police encounters every year in America. Now, just applying the 12%, black population ratio, assume that 7.4 million of those encounters are black. Now, if you actually also buy into the driving while black narrative, then probably an even higher number of those are black encounters. And yet, only 1,000 of those encounters end in shooting. And I don't mean of encounters with blacks. I mean, of all encounters, only about 1,000 per year escalate to the police shooting somebody. Now, media focus continuously stays on on white and black crime. So basically black victims, always. Now, the statistics you might want to know, according to the Bureau of Statistics, violent crime statistics are literally 6-to-1 in the reverse. So six times more crime committed by blacks victimizing whites versus whites victimizing blacks. Yet you never hear those. So for every one of those stories you hear about a black victim, there's 6 stories that have been thrown on the floor that paint the exact reverse. Now, do you think that that's coincidence? Or do you think the media has basically a specific narrative they're trying to push? Now, activism absolutely is persuasive. It's a persuasive tool. It creates public opinion. It is manipulation by definition. It's propaganda. While it can create a good outcome, if your basis is falsified facts, it can create fear, resentment, vindictiveness, and even hopelessness. The kind of hopelessness that might make you want to pull a gun on a cop because you think you're going to die. The only tool, the best tool we have to deal with the world is truth. Now, if somebody's falsified facts and managed to get us to swallow those falsified facts keep us in constant conflict with the world. Nothing that we will try will work. We can never fix real problems because the baseline information that we have is wrong. So it never has the result we want. So here's my simple message. If you are one of these people that calls themselves woke, if you believe you're a good person fighting for the right cause, all I ask you is you have to know the real facts. I just saw that I misspelled real, but forgive me. Now, if you're operating because someone told me, or it feels right, or it's common sense, or everybody knows, or how can you say, that's not good enough, right? Because media makes a career out of manipulating public opinion. That has been the case for 100 years. You absolutely have to do the research and understand what the real truth is. Otherwise, it's on your head. This is not the kind of sin that Jesus absolves from you. This is on your head. You're doing it. And the thing is, while you may be young and it may be fun right now to be in a demonstration, do you really want 20 years later to look back on a period and say, after you've been able to digest this information, then you have this guilt that sits there on you and says, you know what, those stupid things that I did in my youth actually contributed to more minors dying. More people that I was trying to help got killed by my stupid, lack of knowledge. So all I'm saying is this. If I'm lying, if all these statistics don't bear out, if it's true, then by all means keep doing what you're doing. But you owe it to yourself to actually research and be convinced. Not be convinced by a person, not be convinced by somebody trying to sell you a line of shit. Go dig your research. Because if you're wrong, you are just as responsible for the death of that kid as the person who shot him. And that's my point.